Ladies and gentlemen, the following segment of the podcast is presented exclusively by Hillsdale College. For over 175 years, four purposes have defined Hillsdale's mission: learning, character, faith, and freedom. Thank you for listening, and my sincere appreciation to our brothers and sisters at Hillsdale for their great sponsorship.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin. Our number is 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Literally just got back 2 hours ago from a wonderful event at KRLA Country, a wonderful affiliate in Los Angeles, and the great lineup at Salem. And we had a wonderful time. Had to be 1,000 or 1,500 people there. But I did want to come back and do the program, but I want to thank Mr. Atzinger and my buddy Phil Boyce and everybody else associated with that outstanding station, KRLA. Just terrific. My wife and I went, and we just returned. Now, I never stopped working on this program. I'll demonstrate to you. There's a lot going on, and we need to get into all of it. Justice Stephen Breyer was on Fox News Sunday. I would give my right arm to interview Justice Stephen Breyer, but he would never do my show. Not because I'm a right-winger, but because I understand the Constitution at least as well as he does. And so when you have an associate justice of the Supreme Court there, I think one of the questions you ask that justice, from my own perspective anyway, is about Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2. This was a big deal in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It was a big deal when it comes to the federal and state constitutional processes. We've talked about it at length here. What does it say? Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. But no senator, representative, or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. You see, the broadest power possible is given to the state legislatures, specifically, purposely, under the United States Constitution. Now, these men who gathered in Philadelphia, they understood what they were doing. They created the Constitution. They created the federal government. They created the presidency and the vice presidency. They created the Electoral College. They created separation of powers. And they created Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2. In such manner as the legislature thereof may direct, comma. Now, in the state of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, you had a grave violation of the federal Constitution by the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, as much as you had a violation of the Constitution by the Florida Supreme Court in 2000. Actually, this was worse. The difference is the U.S. Supreme Court in 2000 stepped in and upheld the United States Constitution. And one of the arguments people were making, including me, was exactly this section of the Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, as the Florida Supreme Court kept changing the deadlines and the manner in which you would count chads. They kept extending the deadlines. They kept interposing themselves into how chads are to be counted. They were violating the federal Constitution. And the U.S. Constitution put an end to it. The U.S. Supreme Court, under the U.S. Constitution, put an end to it. Because the legislature makes these decisions, not the Florida Supreme Court. Well, what happened in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania was even worse. Because what happened there is also an elected, in this case, Supreme Court of 7 members. 5 of them were Democrats. They extended the time for voting. They eliminated the signature requirement. And they did other things that the legislature in Pennsylvania, which was Republican, did not do. And so there was precedent for the U.S. Supreme Court stepping up to the plate when an appeal was made to the U.S. Supreme Court. But they could only find 2, maybe 3 justices who were prepared to do so. Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, and I believe Gorsuch. Hollywood Roberts is very much concerned about how he's portrayed in the New York Times and the Washington Post. He's also best buddies, I understand, with Thomas Friedman. He's gone Hollywood, he's gone Washington, he's gone rogue. As for the others, the other 2 appointed by Trump, they've become a disgrace, in my humble opinion. Associate Justice Amy has decided that she did not want the attacks on her to continue, that she was appointed for, among other things, to interfere in the election. And the other one, well, they beat the hell out of him, so he's so much the coward right now, Kavanaugh. So there's Justice Stephen Breyer on Fox News Sunday, and he's asked a question. Cut 21, go.
One of your arguments against seeing the court as political is the fact that it refused to even hear the appeals from the Trump camp about the 2020 election. Didn't even hear them.
No, the real question, in my opinion, would have been to cite the United States Constitution, to cite the precedent of the U.S. Supreme Court in Bush versus Gore, to explain what the Florida Supreme Court did in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And you really have to be knowledgeable about these things to ask the question. And then ask the justice, why didn't the court take up the case? Now, why do you view it's political, or why do you think you're political, or how did you avoid being political? Look, I'm not criticizing. I'm just giving my opinion. I think it would have been a lot more useful based on what actually took place. Go ahead.
Including the Supreme Court, I am so disappointed in them. No judge, including the Supreme Court of the United States, has had the courage to allow it to be heard.
Why was that?
Why was it? Because they didn't bring a case, I guess, that met the normal criteria for being heard.
And this is why this justice needed to be seriously challenged if you're going to bring up the subject rather than an attack on Trump. Because they didn't bring a case, I guess, that met the normal criteria for being heard. And what would that be? And what would that be? Go ahead.
We decide to take a case. There have to be 4 votes to take it. So I can't go beyond that. What we do know is that there were not 4 votes to take it because it wasn't taken. And there are criteria, and if we don't take a case, it's, the reason, with all likelihood, is that the criteria weren't met.
And he doesn't tell us what the criteria are, but I will tell you the criteria were met. I just told you why they were met. The criteria were met. That Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 was clearly violated more than once by the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. And a couple of the justices understood that. The problem is we don't have a Justice Rehnquist as the Chief Justice anymore. We don't have a Justice Scalia on the court anymore. A couple of key justices, even Sandra Day O'Connor, understood. And there should have been 4 justices to take up this case, because now it's opened the door wide open to the changing of election laws by elements and forces and political institutions that have no authority to do so under Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2. This isn't about politicizing the court. This isn't about what Donald Trump said about the court. This is about the federal Constitution. And you heard Breyer. He didn't give us a lot, but he gave us enough to make it abundantly clear, including with his cackling like Kamala Harris, that he was never going to allow this to be taken up by the court because it didn't meet his criteria, not because it didn't meet constitutional criteria. Can you think of anything more clear-cut? The court takes up all kinds of goofy cases. that I would argue don't meet constitutional criteria because they want to make decisions and impose their will or whatever it is. But this was a black and white letter law question. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors and so forth. The legislature thereof may direct, not the state Supreme Court, not the governor, not the Secretary of State, not the Board of Elections. The court should have taken it up. The court should have said, it says what it says. There's no ambiguity whatsoever. It's not as if there's an abortion clause or something. There is no ambiguity about this. The legislative history, that is the constitutional history, I should say, is abundantly clear. No reason to cackle. And I wish I would have been there and been able to ask the question about Bush versus Gore, about Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, about what the Florida Supreme Court had done, and what the Pennsylvania Supreme Court had done. I would have liked to know the difference from a constitutional matter, a substantive matter, and why they wouldn't take up the court and what criteria exactly he's talking about. That's why Justice Breyer would never come on my show. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Hillsdale College serves four purposes: learning, character, faith, and freedom. Now, education and faith thrive in freedom, and freedom requires an educated people, a people of good character to preserve it. Hillsdale College has been providing the education needed to preserve free government for over 175 years, and it continues to provide that education today, not only to its 1,500 undergraduate and graduate students, but nationwide, through its free online courses, its support of classical K-12 charter schools, and its other outreach efforts on behalf of liberty. Hillsdale's Articles of Association, dating back to 1844, commit the college to preserving the blessings of civil and religious liberty through the provision of sound learning. This learning includes the Constitution. It includes the laws of nature and nature's God, as described in the Declaration of Independence. It includes America's great heritage and liberty that too often today is falsely derided and denied. Hillsdale's motto is, pursuing truth and defending liberty since 1844. And it'll continue to fight to live up to that motto, come what may. Learn more. Go to levinforhillsdale.com. That's Levin for Hillsdale.com. There's a number of matters that I want to discuss with you this evening, and they all have a common theme. The level of lying that we are receiving from this administration. It is serial lying on major substantive issues that affect your lives. And the media complicity. Now, we've been talking, or hearing talk about booster shots. Get the booster shot, get the booster shot. And then suddenly, two of the most senior people at the FDA resigned. And why did they resign? Because they felt they were being pressured by the Biden administration to push booster shots before they felt the data was in, before the science was ready to support it. It got very minimal media attention, and it died within 24 to 36 hours. Now, the Associated Press this afternoon, with this headline, FDA experts among group opposing U.S. booster shot plan. The average person doesn't need a COVID-19 booster yet, an international group of scientists, including two top U.S. regulators, wrote Monday in a scientific journal. The experts reviewed studies of the vaccine's performance and concluded the shots are working well, despite the extra contagious Delta variant, especially against severe disease, even in populations with fairly high vaccination rates. The unvaccinated are still the major drivers of transmission at the stage of the pandemic, they concluded. So right now they're arguing, no, you don't need boosters yet. So the federal government is saying two things at the same time. You have these FDA experts among groups opposing U.S. booster shot plans. You have the Biden administration trying to push the date for booster shots up early. You have Fauci on TV, who will take both positions at the same time. You now finally had people on our favorite cable network and elsewhere talking about, what do we mean by unvaccinated? What about natural immunity? People who actually have antibodies. Why would they be vaccinated again? And now the doctors are showing up, some of them saying, that's right, that doesn't make sense. And I raised questions even on my Sunday show on Fox. I said, well, this 30% that's unvaccinated, what exactly does that mean? Some of them don't need to be vaccinated because they have natural immunity through the antibody because they already had the virus. So this is nature. This is the way these things work. So 70% are vaccinated, and some percent of the 30 don't need to be vaccinated. So when Joe Biden tries to create a civil war between the vaccinated and unvaccinated as a weapon to attack, two governors, the governor of Florida and the governor of Texas, and as a weapon to try and deviate from his disaster in Afghanistan and elsewhere, he should be condemned roundly. But he's not. So what is all this? So I went over and opened my book to page 198, American Marxism. 199. And you can see the nature of the beast that we're dealing with here. And let me move it up to here. In his 1927 book, Propaganda Technique in the World War, Harold Dwight Laswell describes propaganda as a tool used by the press and others, cloaked as learning and wisdom. He wrote, propaganda is a concession to the rationality of the modern world. A literate world, a reading world, a schooled world prefers to thrive on argument and news. It is sophisticated to the extent of using print, and he that takes to print shall live or perish by the press. All the apparatus of diffuse erudition popularizes the symbols and forms of pseudo-rational appeal. The wolf of propaganda does not hesitate to masquerade in the sheepskin. In other words, it's propaganda. All the viable men of the day, writers, reporters, editors, preachers, lecturers, teachers, politicians, are drawn into the service of propaganda to amplify a master voice. All is conducted with the decorum and the trappings of intelligence. For this is a rational epoch and demands its raw meat cooked and garnished by adroit and skillful chefs. Now this is deserving of a little bit more unraveling, because we're going to continue to get into this as well as Afghanistan, because this is the common thread, the endless lies. I'll be right back. Hillsdale College serves 4 purposes: learning, character, faith, and freedom. Now, education and faith thrive in